Welcome back to UnKind TV, everyone. I'm Martha, and tonight I will be discussing The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Season 10 Reunion Part 1. Before the reunion actually starts, there is a dress rehearsal because this is being done virtually. Usually at the reunion, we see the ladies preparing backstage and giving little confessionals about what they're nervous about. So since we don't have that, we get a little glimpse into what the setup for the virtual reunion was like. The only thing that really stood out to me was Lisa Rinna made sure to have Harry Hamlin make an appearance because she's so unbothered by all the viewers on social media who have pointed out that they don't think Harry Hamlin actually lives with Lisa Rinna. She made sure to drag him into the frame and he'd go, apparently I don't live here. Well, thank you, Lisa, because now we know it's true. He doesn't live there. Now the actual reunion begins with all the ladies and Andy in little boxes on the screen. Andy is in the middle. It looks like the Brady Bunch, but with Children of the Corn. Let's discuss the looks. Dorit is a beautiful woman, so she never truly looks bad, but I find her fashion choices are often a miss. To me, she looks like Princess Leia. Kyle is back with the Elvira hair. I think it looks horrible. I'm sorry. I'm all for a retro look, but on her, it's very witchy. She already has a witchy vibe going on. I remember when Kyle and Kim really went after Brandi when Brandi was new to the cast. Kyle herself said all she was missing was the big wart on her nose. This hair is not doing her any favors. Andy jokes that she looks like she was inspired by Dynasty. Next up is John Mellencamp's daughter. Andy says, Teddy, pink hair, don't care. For some reason, she says, yeah, quarantine pink. What exactly does that mean? What is quarantine pink? I don't understand the connection between the quarantine and dyeing your hair pink. I said on Twitter that I thought of Grease when I saw the pink hair. Do you remember Frenchie gets her hair colored pink and Joan Blondell goes, your hair looks like an Easter egg. Erica Jane looks like Lucy after they pull her out of the meat locker. For someone who is trying to move away from this Ice Queen image, she literally looks like she's wearing ice. And she doesn't move her face, and she's looking around very confused. I'm assuming she didn't know where to look whenever they set up the virtual reunion equipment because she's very like a New York pigeon in December. That's probably how she looked when they shut down Broadway. It was still quite cold in New York. Rinna. Andy wants to know what's with the hair, what's the personality of this wig, what's her name, and Rinna says they've named this wig Joan Crawford. Again, Rinna, stop showing your hand that you are so bothered by the comments on social media. Okay, haha, Joan Crawford, mommy dearest, everyone says you're a horrible mother, you caused your daughter's eating disorder, but I am insulted as a lifelong Joan Crawford fan. Frankly, I would much rather have Joan Crawford for a mother than Lisa Rinna because Joan Crawford was a real movie star, a legend, and at least she wasn't a constant public embarrassment. Garcelle says her look was inspired by the flapper era. I see that. I'm not crazy about this dress. Somebody killed Big Bird or something. A lot of yellow feathers going on. I will say, though, she looks very pretty with the headpiece. And finally, Denise. I actually think Denise looks the best. She's wearing a simple pink dress. She's got her hair swept to the side. Lots of dark eyeliner to bring out those piercing blue eyes. And what can I say? She's a natural beauty. She looks like a Barbie that's been hitting the Casamigos for a long time. Okay, now it is Garcelle versus Kyle. When Garcelle was on Watch What Happens Live for the first time, she was asked which of the housewives was the least welcoming to her, and she named Kyle. Kyle says she didn't understand why Garcelle would say that because she felt she had always been very welcoming and warm with her. And Garcelle says, let me explain that. I was very drunk. I was nervous. It was my very first time ever being on Watch What Happens Live, and I couldn't remember anybody else's name. Kyle keeps trying to talk over Garcelle, which leads Garcelle to her next point about why she doesn't really like Kyle, and that is Kyle has a way of interrupting people and making them feel glazed over, like their point does not matter. Dorit takes the opportunity to chime in. Kyle does interrupt a lot. When you're making a point, even a long-winded point, it isn't nice to make the person feel like it doesn't matter. And Kyle's like, that's what happens when people argue. Denise adds, Kyle talks at us, but doesn't listen. And it's not just when we're arguing. Now Kyle is mad. And Kyle implies that Garcelle came ready with something to be angry with her over. She thinks that Garcelle was told to bring up that Kyle interrupts a lot. And then Kyle proves that she is the one who came armed with a grenade to use against Garcelle, because she turns the conversation from defending her poor listening skills to, by the way, you came to my charity event and you raised your paddle to donate $5,000 to the Children's Hospital of LA and you never paid. Garcelle is mad, and rightfully so. That's very low to try and embarrass Garcelle that way, make her look cheap. I don't like that. When it comes to anything financial, that's the kind of thing that you take someone aside or have your people reach out to her people. Listen, maybe it was an oversight. We didn't actually receive the donation. That was very nasty of Kyle. It really rubbed me the wrong way. And Garcelle was mad. Garcelle's like, you better watch what you say. That is not true. It has been hashed out now on Instagram and Twitter. Garcelle says it was an oversight and it has now been paid. Kyle, of course, had to post a whole long thing where she's shading Garcelle for the entire Instagram story, and then at the very end said, oh, it was paid in the end. I can totally see how an oversight like that can happen. When you're at an event and you're drinking and you're mingling and you're talking to people, nobody swipes their credit card on the spot. It happens, and you have to follow up with people and chase down their donations. Kyle did this to be vindictive. But Kyle says she brought it up just because she feels like Garcelle needs to be genuine. This is not about being genuine. No, you wanted to embarrass her. I think Garcelle has been very genuine all season. If anything, a little too genuine, and has gotten herself in hot water for being tactless. So I don't see why Kyle thought it would be a good move to try and paint Garcelle as someone who isn't genuine. Then Garcelle says that Kyle uses Twitter to get back at the cast. Like maybe she won't say things in her confessionals or while they're filming, but she will tweet little things to get her Twitter mob angry with the cast member in question. Garcelle says someone present at this reunion warned her about Kyle's use of Twitter. Andy wants to know who it was. Garcelle will not do that. Good for Garcelle. She's not throwing anybody under the bus. I don't like people who do that. Points for Garcelle. And Andy goes, does anybody want to cop to warning Garcelle? Crickets. While this back and forth with Kyle and Garcelle is going on, they're showing reaction shots from the other ladies, and Erica's keep cracking me up. She keeps doing that pigeon thing. I wonder if she watches this back and goes, what was I doing? Because the whole time Kyle's bringing up, she's like, I didn't tweet anything that bad. I didn't think they were that bad, but she was trying to put heat on Garcelle. And while this is happening, you see, now Andy takes the opportunity to give Garcelle the floor. He says, talk about what it was like being the first Black housewife on Beverly Hills. Garcelle said she felt a lot of pressure about how to perform on this show. She said, Black women are dogged by this racist stereotype that they're quick to anger, but you want to be strong. But then when you're strong, people assume that you don't have any feelings. And Garcelle also says that she felt like the other women were tiptoeing around her a little bit because of the race issue. That there are things that perhaps they wouldn't think twice about saying to another white housewife, but because Garcelle is Black, they're afraid of it becoming about her race. And she says that if she were in their shoes, she would also feel nervous that Black Twitter can come after you very hard, and she kind of sympathized with them over that. Kyle is really quick to jump in and say, I never felt like that. If I had a problem with you, I would just tell you. Oh, we know, as evidenced by the fact that you had no problem coming on the reunion and the first thing you did was try to make Garcelle look cheap. I can understand the apprehension that the other ladies might feel, not just because Garcelle is the only Black cast member, but she is the first one on this show. I think this was sort of a test drive for Bravo. I think they know that they have a major lack of diversity problem, and they're trying to see how this goes. Like, can the veteran housewives behave themselves and not say horribly insensitive things? Erica explains that while she had trouble connecting with her castmates in the past, she hit it off with Garcelle quickly. A, because Garcelle was really open, honest, and fun, but also Erica feels she has changed over the years herself, that when she first joined the show, she was a bit more guarded and now she feels like she can be a little bit more vulnerable with the group. Andy asks Garcelle what it's like to be raising biracial children in the current climate. And Garcelle explains that it's complicated, that you never want your children to feel ashamed of being biracial, but there are things they have to be aware of, and that she has always had to talk to them about being very careful when dealing with the police. She mentions that she had been pulled over not so long ago and that she had her son Jax in the back seat, and she had to be so incredibly careful that she has to keep her hands on the wheel 10 and 2, and she has to tell the officer, I'm reaching for my wallet. And that when she expresses these things to white friends of hers, they can't believe it. They're like, someone like you, someone who's well known and famous, she says, yeah, my resume does not matter when I'm dealing with the police. Garcelle says it's been so long that this is not a new thing. This is something she has carried all her life, and that it took COVID, it took the lockdowns, and it took the death of George Floyd for people to wake up and for change to start really happening. She says that she is hopeful and that white people getting involved with Black Lives Matter has made all the difference. Andy asks if the other housewives are having conversations with their families about Black Lives Matter, and Kyle is the first one to pipe up again. She says that this is a constant conversation at her dinner table, that she thinks some people are afraid to talk about it, that they have good intentions, but they don't know what they're supposed to say. And she says she reaches out to friends of hers to ask questions. And Garcelle appreciates that. Garcelle says she likes when her white friends call her and ask her the uncomfortable questions, because that's the only way you can move forward. She says, for example, a friend asked her, do you prefer the term African American or do you prefer Black? She says, I personally prefer Black. Asking those questions is okay if it's with the intention of making things right and moving forward. Then Andy asks Erica, and I've been wondering about this, how she feels having a son who is a police officer. And Erica says she gets to see the good side of law enforcement through her son, but she strongly recognizes that there are major institutional problems at play and there has to be radical change. I thought Erica gave a great response. Garcelle jumps in and said, I actually reached out to Erica to ask about how her son was doing. And Erica says, yeah, you were the first person, actually. Wow, this is intense for Housewives. I don't usually get choked up watching Housewives, but I was moved by this conversation because Garcelle knows more than anybody what it is to be a mom and have a son that you know has a target on his back. And right now, law enforcement has come under major scrutiny, rightfully so. And Garcelle, instead of shutting Erica out or treating her like she's on the wrong side, wanted to know, are you okay? Is your son okay? A rare, mature, insightful conversation on a reunion of the Real Housewives, no less. And now Sutton joins. Sutton, I feel, looks better now than she did all season. Dorit apologizes to Sutton for embarrassing her at that dinner where she was yelling at the table that Sutton said she was going to flip the F out. And Sutton was very hurt by that because Sutton didn't understand why Dorit needed to make such an issue, why Dorit needed to embarrass her, why Dorit was dishonest when what Sutton had said was, I'm going to flip out. And Dorit was making it seem like this was a ticking time bomb. Dorit is saying, I watched it back and I felt very bad. And Sutton says, you didn't care. You didn't care at all. And Dorit, I don't quite understand her justification for all of this. She says that she's very close to Lisa Rinna's daughters and protective, but I don't see how Sutton posed any kind of threat to Lisa Rinna's kids. There's a lot of repetitive back and forth, but it comes down to Sutton saying, I accept your apology, let's move forward. Thank you. Andy brings up that the ladies have gone on and on about the very generous gifts that Sutton gives. And they all start beaming visibly when this topic comes up. They reiterate that, yes, Sutton is incredibly generous. And Sutton jokes, well, I'm trying to buy their friendship. And Erica jumps in and says, nope, you're just a very well-bred Southern lady. Dorit, I think, is trying to bury the hatchet, and she goes, as I said to you in my text when I received your flowers on my birthday, I think you're incredibly kind and sweet, and I've really enjoyed getting to know you. Now we get into that first impressions game where the Mellencamp kid completely lost her shit. Sutton was asked, what were your first impressions of all the ladies? Of course, it was Lisa Rinna's idea to play this kind of game. Sutton had said at the time, Teddy, I thought you were going to be kind of boring. Oh, and pregnant. And Teddy started crying. John Mellencamp's daughter is scowling as they bring this up again. It was the pregnant thing that upset me, because why would you joke about something that's such a miracle for me? And I feel like you didn't even really try to get to know me. Sutton apologizes over the pregnancy thing. She did not realize how difficult it was for Teddy to get pregnant and carry a pregnancy. She didn't mean anything by it. She says that's how she jokes with her friends, which I completely understand. Like, oh God, you're pregnant. Meaning you're going to be an emotional wreck. It's the same kind of thing my friends will say about me if I'm having really bad PMS. Uh-oh. But Teddy took it very personally. And for John Mellencamp's daughter to be upset that Sutton said this without getting to know her is absurd, because the game was called First Impressions. What was your first impression? That was an honest response. And then Teddy has to say, me and my cute black romper. And Sutton goes, are you really going to let my small disdain for your clothes get in the way of our friendship? That's silly. Erica Jane is like, she said disdain. Sutton addresses some viewer feedback that she had been a little too harsh in her remarks. And she admits, she's like, I was tense when I first joined the show, and I came across like an asshole, a snotty asshole. I love Sutton. Sutton, you need a diamond. They take a break, but they include a little snippet from the break where Andy notices that Garcelle looks really mad. And she says she's annoyed because of what Kyle said about her not making good on her charitable donation. And Kyle says, yeah, well, it's hard to be in the hot seat. And speaking of hot seats, now it's Denise Richards' turn. Goody, goody. Andy gets into this by making a lighthearted softball joke about steak at strip clubs, because Denise had said that she and Aaron were going to go have a steak at a strip club. I noticed Andy kind of shaded Erica because he asks her for her expertise as to where you can get a good steak at a strip club. He goes, hey, Erica, did they have good steak at Shaker's? Just a little reminder that Erica was a stripper. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like she has kind of tried to get away from that. And he thought nothing of bringing it up. Now the topic turns to, why didn't Denise bring her kids to Kyle's family party? Kids should have been there. We know that Denise was upset by all the sex talk and threesome conversations when her kids were within earshot. And the ladies think that Denise didn't bring her kids to the family event after that because she was suddenly shielding her children from their vile mouths. And Denise says, well, not entirely. She says, I have 2 teenagers who don't want to come, and I have Eloise. Eloise has special needs, and she cannot be unsupervised around a pool, not even for a second, so it wouldn't be feasible to bring her to an event like that. It's very much irritating me how Rinna is now, like, as Dolores Catania would say, dog with a bone, yapping over Denise every time Denise opens her mouth. It's quite frustrating. She doesn't let Denise get a sentence out. Denise says both things are true. Her teenage daughters don't want to come to these events, and Eloise is a child that requires extra supervision. And also, yeah, she was upset about the conversation that took place near her kids. And she points out that the ladies told her when she was upset, well, then don't bring them to dinners. So she said, all right, I won't. Denise starts to say that she feels at the events where the husbands are invited, there isn't usually so much sex talk, and the group jumps on her about how that's not true. And one of the first things she said with all the husbands there was a comment about Aaron's big penis. The editors give us a flashback. She did indeed do that. And as much as I don't like this group, and I am mostly on Denise's side with the entire situation, she is very hypocritical. And she does bring up sex a lot, and she does talk about her husband's penis incessantly. So they do have a point that for her to start pearl clutching is a little ridiculous. But the way they're conducting themselves every time Denise tries to get a thought out is very off-putting. Erica says Denise sets the tone when she sits down and brings up Aaron's penis. Like it's Denise who starts the sex talk. Baby Mellencamp says, it's frustrating that you won't just admit that you made everyone look like assholes. Dorit says, I don't think Denise is trying to make anyone look like assholes. Garcelle backs up what Dorit is saying. All of a sudden, Garcelle doesn't exist, though. This was something that irritated me. It's like after she was given the floor to discuss Black Lives Matter and being the first Black housewife, okay, you shut up now. You're not important. They acted like Garcelle hadn't even contributed anything. They show Dorit, she gets the full screen, and you barely hear Garcelle saying, I didn't think that either. Erica feels they were set up to look bad from the very beginning, that Denise intentionally had them seated not far from her kids. And then she says she was singled out, that Denise took her out for coffee and told her she was upset about what was discussed around the kids. And she says she apologized and she took it on the chin, even though she knew she was being singled out. But then she heard that Denise took it to Teddy and Sutton. And that's when Erica goes crazy and she goes, motherfucker, I'm out. Is that necessary? It's very over the top. Denise is trying to respond. She says, Erica, I wasn't upset with you. Do you think I was upset with you? And again, before anyone can say anything, Rinna, dog with a bone, is going, you're being gaslit, Erica. You're being gaslit. Rinna, just shut up. Denise says it was awkward to have to talk about this with her kids, that it wasn't something she had discussed before, that her daughter Sammy did hear them talking about threesomes, and Rinna starts screaming over Denise. It wasn't awkward, Denise. It wasn't awkward. What exactly did Sammy say to you? Rinna is trying to make the point that Denise had told the group her daughter Sammy was upset by the conversation, but then they wanted to know what Sammy had exactly said. And Denise said, well, that's between Sammy and me. Some of that was aired on the show, and Sammy did not seem upset. She kind of just laughed it off and said, you guys were talking about threesome. But that's how teenagers respond to things. I don't think a teenager would start crying going, you guys were talking about threesomes. Talking about sex with your parents when you're a teenager is the most awkward thing ever. And Denise says to Lisa, how do you know what was awkward? Denise says she wasn't upset with anybody and she wasn't going to Teddy and Sutton to speak ill of Erica. She was just trying to communicate with each of them mom to mom about her concerns. Then we get into what Erica said about teenagers having sex. Erica was dismissive of Denise being upset. She basically said they know about sex and they know about threesomes if they haven't had them already. This was very controversial. A lot of viewers interpreted that to mean that Erica was implying that Denise's kids specifically were having sex and having threesomes. Denise was upset by it. I don't know. I don't know exactly what she meant, if she meant just in general, oh, please, teenagers hear it all, or they're already doing these things, or that Denise is wild and therefore her kids are wild. I can see how it might be taken different ways. I don't think it's nice, and I don't think she's right. Yes, some teenagers have sex. Not all teenagers are doing this crazy stuff so young. They just aren't. I remember being in high school and my impression was, because of things in the media on shows like this, that everybody would be having sex. Like when I first went to high school, that's what I expected, sex everywhere. And I was like, actually, most of these people are just kids who haven't done any of this yet. Rinna is now at a 10. She specifically calls out that Denise was liking tweets attacking the group, including one that was targeted at Erica Jane, but included that Rinna should be fired and that she's a racist. And Denise had to take the tweet down. Denise is denying. She's like, I didn't like a tweet. I took the tweet down. Why would I do that, Lisa? I'm not lying to you. I saw the part that was to Erica. I didn't even know you were on it. I don't know if I buy that, but she keeps saying she took it down, and Rinna is bellowing. She's like, you took that down because Bravo made you take it down, Denise. I can't hear what Denise is saying because Rinna is screaming, you lie, 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 Denise. For what it's worth, I do think Lisa Rinna should be fired because I can't stand her. I think she is a bully and I think she's a psycho. Andy asks Denise if she had to talk to her kids about all the sex stuff she said on her first season about happy endings and the big penis. Denise says, well, she doesn't want to censor herself, but it's a fine line and her kids don't really watch the show. Rinna screaming again, bullshit, bullshit, Denise, your kids watch the show. Erica Jane is also yelling. She's like, oh, they don't look at the scenes that they're in. They don't want to watch any of it. I'm getting a migraine. Denise acknowledges that her kids have been told things by their friends, that they see things online, like they're not completely immune from what's said on the show. And Erica is going after her something fierce. Erica's like, do you pick and choose what they hear? Do they hear about your happy ending, or do they just hear bad stuff about the group? And Rinna's screaming, the whole world knows about Denise's husband getting a happy ending from a 100-year-old woman. This is like somebody just threw 10 buckets of chum over a boat and there's all these sharks descending. The second Andy started talking to Denise about her various conflicts with the ladies, everything took a nasty dark turn. Ugly. Andy asks Denise, does Rinna have a point? That perhaps you said too much during your first season and now you were trying to change your image. Denise says no, that she just felt like she was put on the defensive from early on, like she was fielding attacks left and right from the beginning of the season, and that's why she was behaving differently. While she's saying this, Erica Jane gets up and goes, I need more lip gloss. So rude. Denise says actually she wanted to move on and move forward from these things, but it was the group that kept bringing them up over and over and over. And then Rinna just has to get full-blown obnoxious. Gas lighting, let's have some gas lighting. I'm sorry, this bitch is fucking crazy. Excuse my mouth, but she is nuts. And if anybody has been guilty of gaslighting over the years on this show, it is Lisa Rinna. The number one person that I see people complain about on Twitter when it comes to Bravo shows is Lisa Rinna. Everybody wants her to be fired. Everyone thinks she has gone overboard. Everyone thinks she's a mean girl. Everyone thinks she has run her course. John Mellencamp's daughter is a close second, but she gets all the hate for being mostly boring and annoying. People see through Lisa Rinna, and they see someone who is not only insane, but insane in a very toxic, malicious way. She is not a nice person, and I completely share that sentiment. Keep Sutton, get rid of Lisa Rinna. We end with Rinna concluding her little gaslighting show tune and saying, good job, Denise. And Denise goes, thank you, Lisa. Even Andy looks puzzled. And that was it for round 1 of the Beverly Hills reunion. Let me know in the comments what you thought of reunion part 1. If you'd like to further support UnKind TV, there is information available in the description boxes below every video, and you can follow UnKind TV on Instagram and Twitter. I will see you soon to discuss the Real Housewives of New York finale. And of course, I'm very much looking forward to part 2 of the Beverly Hills reunion. Bye.